as you see. So Amanda Reynolds is Senior Community Engagement Coordinator for the Food Bank Farm in Hadley, Massachusetts, which is fairly new, right? Yeah. So they're in the beginning stages of creating a no-till micro farm dedicated to food sovereignty and sustainability. She's going to talk about the farm and the farm practices. And we have Anita from Not Our Farm, and she's actually coming to us from Albuquerque. And if you saw the brochure or the zine that I left out on the registration table, this is an organization that is for farm workers who do not own the farm they work. And they are it's an activist group dedicated to equity, safe conditions, and awareness. And finally, but last but not least, we have Gabby Pereira from Northeast Farmers of Color Land Trust. And I encourage you to go to their website and look at what they do. But essentially, they're committed to permanent and secure land tenure for Indigenous, Black, Latinx, and Asian farmers, in addition to reparative and regenerative farming. So we're gonna have each of them give a little presentation on what they do, and then we'll have lots of time for questions and interactivity. So let's have Amanda, if you don't mind going first. And Amanda has some slides for us.
I'll try to project my voice. I notoriously have a quiet voice. But I'm so excited to be here and with you all and talk about our Food Bank Farm. My name is Amanda. I am the Senior Engagement Coordinator at the Food Bank. And I will go into a little bit about what the food bank is versus the food pantry versus the food bank farm. They're all different, and there's a lot of different moving parts. But the food bank farm, we purchased this land in 2020, so we're pretty new. And I have more of a community engagement background. I've been at the food bank for almost 5 years now, and I started as a volunteer coordinator, and then I always loved sustainable agriculture and was an avid gardener, and then I started to work on the farm. We usually have a farmer, but currently it's just myself and a TerraCorps member and a lot of volunteers. So I am always open to suggestions or anything that you have all gone through, and I am not a side, will try to do my best to answer your questions as well. But yeah. So just a little bit of the background. The Food Bank of Western Massachusetts is a pretty big organization. It's a nonprofit. We are the ones that take care of the food pantries in the 4 counties of Western Massachusetts. So we have a network of 170, we call them member agencies, of their food pantries, meal sites, emergency sites. And we take care of them in ways that we distribute the food to them. And then we also have advocacy program, talking to local legislators, trying to make really big political change in that way. We have events that try to bring up awareness and advocate for those we serve. And we have mobile food banks that go to different sites along the 4 counties of Western Massachusetts and bring the food literally into the community. We have a SNAP team that helps sign up people for SNAP. So there's just a lot of moving parts within the food bank. And then we also have 2 farms. We were one of the first food banks. There's 200 food banks in America. We were the first to purchase a farm. I believe it was, I'm blanking on the year we purchased our first farm, but that now we actively have, it's called Mountain View Farm. They take care of that land, and they give 50, or not 50, but they give about 100,000 pounds of fresh produce a year to us, and we distribute it out into our communities. So we do not charge them rent. We charge them vegetable rent, basically. And that is kind of, I'll talk more about it, but that's the model we have with our second farm as well. We have 2 contracted farmers on the land. So the farm I'll talk more about, it says we purchased in 1992 for first. But the farm that I'm going to talk about, we bought 142 acres. We worked with the town of Hadley and Kestrel Land Trust to save this 142 acres forever as farmland. And we have 2 contracted farmers that are on the land. They have about 10 acres each. And 50% of what they grow goes to Springfield Public Schools into their school lunches. And that's the contract that we have. So they don't have to give us money. They just give us vegetables in a way that's taking care of one of the communities we really care about. And then the portion of the farm that I work on is going to be 3 acres. Right now we're at just 1 acre, but it's a no-till community engagement farm. And that is where we're starting to learn a lot with how to use no-till practices, how to engage the community, have volunteers. teach students on the farm, and who we distribute to. So, yeah, that's a little bit about our background. And then our mission of the farm, 3 different things. We have regenerative farming. So as I mentioned, we do no-till farming, cover cropping, companion planting. That's a photo of our farm. It was actually at a pretty weedy place in the summer. We use, it's all organic. The 142 acres is organic, it's great feed. And we really care about the topsoil as much as we possibly can. Everything that we do is dedicated to the topsoil to try to protect it. We're learning more and more what that means to us and how to, deal with the weeds that produce vegetables, that be in line with nature while we're protecting that topsoil. And we just feel very strongly about regenerating the farmland that we're on. And equitable land access. So we are in the process of doing this. We want to lease our land to immigrants and farmers of color. We understand that BIPAC farmers have been left out of the conversation of farming for a very long time. And we really want to get at the root of it and provide accessible, affordable land access to them. So we're still in the process of what that might look like, but it most likely will look like what we talked about with the exchange of vegetables, giving a certain amount of vegetables to the food bank so we can distribute it to give land. And we have 69 tillable acres, so this can expand. And for next year, we're trying to recruit a farmer in January that is an immigrant or a farmer of color to work on the no-till community engagement farm and begin that leasing process where they can use our resources, have land, and then give a portion of the vegetables to us so that we can give it out to the communities we serve. Community engagement is really a big thing to this farm. We couldn't have done it without our volunteers. Like I said, it's just 2 of us right now trying to wrap up the farm season, winterize, and we have volunteers that come Tuesdays and Thursdays just out of the goodness of their hearts. A lot of physical work, and we also have corporate groups that come, school groups, and all different types of people that come and just get their hands dirty and really support our mission. We do, more and more each year. We have a bunch of farm lessons or have school groups on and teach them farm lessons about the soil, how to grow. We use hand tools. We don't use any tractors, so we also taught students how to use the cardboard method and just different ways to empower them how to garden at home using just hand tools and everything that's accessible. All right, farming methods. So no-till farming, you can see that giant tarp. And if anyone that farms uses a tarp, know that it's a lot of work. But we do not till, and we want to protect that topsoil, like I mentioned, prevent erosion and increase nutrients in the soil. And currently we are putting the farm to bed and adding mulch to the tops of soil, trying to cover it, let beds go to rest because they're tired. It's been a long farm season, and slowly do that in harmony with our. And then companion planting, this is, we tried this for the first time this year. So whether we have pollinator beds nearby, or we're planting vegetables that are best friends together and that they can take care of each other, so we don't have to spray. But we want to have plant diversity, and when you look at our beds, even half of the bed will be one produce and then the other will be something else, or we'll have 3 lines of vegetables, but one will be in the center different to try to throw off the pests and just work in that way. Cover cropping. This is something that's really big to us, and not just only our farm, but then the other 142 acres. We use cover cropping to make sure that we're giving nutrients to the soil, feeding the soil throughout the winter, and then we even use it in the spring too, and then use our tarps to release all those nutrients back into the soil. This is another photo of our farm, but food security is very important to us. We are strengthening our local food farming while also providing nutritious food. So, you know, in our little no-till farm, all the food that we harvest goes to 2 local food pantries nearby. And then the bigger picture of the other farmers that work on the land, they give their food to Springfield Public School. So we're really trying to change the local food economy in that way. And we also believe that not only those that get the food from what we harvest, but the food bank in general, we're trying to provide the most healthy, nutritious food that we can. We believe food is a basic right, and we're done with the days of giving like leftover bad food to those we serve. We want to give them healthy, organic, local food. So that's just really important to us for community food security. Yep, almost done with that. And then, like I said, we're in year 2, so I am, and our whole farm staff is just very open to any ideas, thoughts, wisdom, or experience that you've had. We are at that very beginning time where anything is possible, and we have all these really great ideas, and we've already started to put a lot of them into action. But we know that there's more that we can do. There's more that we can think about, and we've learned from our mistakes in the past. Of, you know, we're a large nonprofit. The food bank's pretty big. We have 60 staff members that work there. We serve 100,000 people a month, so it's very big. And we also have to understand, with how big we are, we have to listen to everyone in the community, and we really want to learn from our mistakes in that way. We purchased this farmland. We've got all these really good grants, and we realize that not all farms have that ability. So we want to not overshadow our local farms that are smaller than us. So we want to really empower each other and have people on our farm teach workshops. And I don't know, there's just all these different ways we want to work with other farms. So please email me, please reach out, and yeah.
To share, great. And come visit.
Yeah, and come, we always welcome visitors. We also have a lot of trails because of Pastoral Land Trust, and that tons of hiking trails is public land. So please come, and we'd love to have you either volunteer, or you could just get a farm tour, or just learn about what we're doing, or we learn from you.
Great. Thanks, Amanda. Okay, so if we could have Anita tell us some more about Not Our Farm. Welcome.
Yes, absolutely. Is it possible for me to share slides or not so much?
It is.
Oh, awesome.
Yes.
Okay. Let me try here.
Yep, there we go.
Yay. Okay, can you all see that?
Yes.
Perfect. Good morning or afternoon. I guess it's late morning for y'all. I'm calling in here from Albuquerque, New Mexico. And my name is Anita Adalja, and I'm very honored to be here and be invited to share with you all about the Not Our Farm project. It's a storytelling project of which I'm the founder. So I'm going to go through some slides here, and then I really look forward to having some discussion and answering any questions you all have. And before I start just talking about the Not Our Farm project and the work that we do, I just want to acknowledge that I'm going to be speaking about some of the dark truths that happen for workers in agriculture. So I just want to acknowledge that. And if you are a worker yourself, or a farm owner, or working in the agricultural spectrum, which I'm sure most of you are, just take space if anything happens to be kind of bringing some feelings up for you. So the Not Our Farm project at its core is a storytelling project. We really work to share the stories of workers on farms that are not their own. And when I say not their own, I'm talking about farm crew members, apprentices, interns, farm managers, team members. So these are folks who are working on other people's farms and doing, the labor on the farm, that being the harvesting, selling at the farmer's market, planting, that kind of work. So Not Our Farm is a nonprofit, and basically we want to center the work and the lives and the stories of these workers. So we started off by starting in 2019, started interviewing workers on farms. So these were phone call interviews, these are in-person interviews, Zoom interviews when that kind of came around. And really wanting to hear the stories, like what brought people to farms, why are they interested in farming, what are their joys, what are their triumphs, what are their harvests, what are their hardships, what are their experiences on farms, and really wanting to celebrate those stories. So since the winter of 2019, I've interviewed over 100 workers on farms not their own, and these are all over the country, all over North America, so Canada as well, and some in Europe too. So all of these people have come to farms they're either, working on a farm maybe for a season to experience it, or they're career farm workers. Not Our Farm also, through these stories and through these interview process, we've started to kind of acknowledge and identify abuses that happen on farms, that we've maybe normalized in the name of farming. So Not Our Farm has kind of shifted to not just telling these stories, that's still at the core. And I encourage you to visit our website and read the stories from these workers. But we've also started to, I would say, starting to do some work around amplifying these abuses and acknowledging them and informing consumers, informing the public of what's happening on these farms as well, and providing support for workers, whether this be in the source of resources for workers or funding direct funds to workers for whatever they need, that kind of thing. So these are some of the questions that are asked in all interviews with workers, and they're the questions that have guided this entire project. So you can see here, who is a farmer? What do you consider a farm? What is the difference between the terms farmer and farm worker? What do you call yourself in your work? And what does ownership have to do with being considered a farmer? So words matter, and they're really, really important and are very, very powerful. And a little bit about myself is that I have worked on farms, not my own, for 12 seasons all over the country, Pennsylvania, California, New Mexico now, Virginia, New York. And the Not Our Farm project kind of stemmed from my own experiences on farms of being not acknowledged, not kind of my word not taken, or my experience or my expertise not kind of offered up or not being acknowledged by the farm owners. And one day I looked around and I looked at the crew alongside which I was working, who are truly the heart of the operation. And I thought, wow, our stories aren't being told. People don't even know. I've worked on farms where people didn't even know they had labor working on the farm. And it was kind of an experience where I wanted to really, again, like amplify these stories, share these stories, and let people know and weave our stories into the fabric of American agriculture. So these are kind of the questions that have befuddled me and befuddled crews that I've worked on. We've oftentimes, there's been a distinguish between consumers and the farm owners themselves, that the people working on the farms aren't actually farmers. So the question I really wanted to tease out in these interviews is, what does it take to be considered a farmer in this country? Why is land ownership so tied and proprietorship so tied with being called a farmer? And as workers, do we even want to be called farmers? Do we really want to be, or do we want to separate ourselves as workers? So these are these are the guiding questions that we talk about in all of the interviews, and that you'll see throughout the different resources that we offer. This is at the core, these questions that kind of eat at us. So you can see here, this is a quote here from Danny Elias, who is a worker on farms. A lot of people have this assumption that because you're an organic farmer, you are this righteous, pure of heart person, wholly good, which is not true. Farmers are just as capable of causing harm as anyone else. So, like I said earlier, a big piece of the Not Our Farm project is acknowledging the abuses and the harms that are happening on farms. That some of you may know that in a lot of states, farms aren't subject to minimum wage laws. OSHA protections don't necessarily apply if it's under 12 workers. Food safety laws that would mean that you have to have a bathroom on the farm. If you're a small enough farm, you're not subject to those regulations. So what Not Our Farm has has been doing the work towards is acknowledging that even on these small farms, at your local farmers markets, there is harm happening. And I'm not saying all farms, right? But like, this is something that we need to acknowledge. Often in media, we're going to hear about these really large farms in Florida and California. But it's important to know that agriculture itself, no matter the scale, no matter if it's urban or rural, for-profit, nonprofit, we need to hold farm businesses accountable in terms of what kind of harm could be happening for workers there. And these are just some of the abuses and issues that have been brought to light through the Not Our Farm project and through these interviews. Food insecurity, about 66% of farm workers are considered food insecure, and it's not a guarantee that workers have access to the food that they're growing. Not only can they maybe not afford it, it's not something that is given to them, and not a given that you would have access to the produce. And if you do have access to produce, I've worked on farms, and many of the folks I've interviewed on farms, the produce that you have access to is B or C grade, aphid infested greens or almost rotten tomatoes, things like that. So that's an issue that has definitely been brought about through these interviews. Poverty or near poverty wages, 33% of workers are under the federal poverty line. And I mentioned earlier that a lot of labor isn't subject to minimum wage. Many times farm labor is stipended, or it might be unpaid internships. So there's ways that farm owners have gotten around having to pay workers. So that is something that has come up, wage theft along with that. The sexual harassment and racism that occurs on farms, 80%, there was a study in California with farm workers, female identifying farm workers, and 80% of them said that they had been sexually harassed while on the job as a farm worker. So there's a lot of abuses and incidents that are happening that are coming through these interviews. Knowledge hoarding is one that it's interesting to think of, when you're working on a farm and maybe you're really good at harvesting strawberries, and that's something that the farm owner is going to have you do day in and day out because that's something that you're good at. Maybe they're pressed for time and can't train you on something else. But what happens with that is you could work 10 years on a farm and not know all the different aspects of growing produce. So knowledge hoarding is something that is huge on farms. Many workers interviewed through the Not Our Farm project haven't been privy to learning about crop planning or business planning, the behind the scenes work on the farm marketing, building those customer relationships. So those are also big issues that have happened or that have been reported on farms. Lack of hygiene options, I talked about. This might be surprising to some people, but so many small farms don't have access to bathrooms. A lot of small farms because of land access issues are leasing across multiple fields. So it's not financially viable for them to have a porta potty on each of the fields, but that doesn't make it okay, right? So, or hand washing stations. So a lot of workers are reporting that they don't have access to bathrooms, don't have access to hand washing stations. And not only is this a food safety issue, this is a dignity issue for people having to go to the bathroom on the side of the field, and safety as well. So the role of our work through all of this is, as I said earlier, it's to center and celebrate workers. Workers are at the core of the Not Our Farm Not Our Farm project. And also really support workers in understanding that we are experts in our field. We hold so much. We are the heart of the operation, and really acknowledge that, because something that can happen over years and years of working for farm owners or consumers that might not even acknowledge that you exist is that we diminish what our skills are. So part of the Not Our Farm project is to really celebrate the skills of workers on farms. We're a community and we do a lot of community resource sharing. So workers share information with each other, share kind of skills or what their experiences have been on farms with each other, so that we can kind of count on each other to learn about things and get the heads up on maybe like issues on farms, or like how much is a right wage that you should be being paid, things like that. We want to really acknowledge and stop normalizing these abuses that we've kind of said are okay in the name of farming, and those kinds of things like working 15-hour days, or not having the proper gear or attire, not having safe working conditions. We also want to hold farm owners accountable and stop this myth of the family farmer that, that they're doing this heroic work, because at its core, farming is a business. And just because, the government isn't holding regulations or holding farms accountable in the same way that they do for other small businesses, that doesn't mean it's okay. And it doesn't mean that we can't strive for change. And ultimately, our goal is to realize worker-centered farm futures. So a little bit about the resource sharing that I just mentioned. We have an Instagram that's a pretty dynamic space, and we offer community questions that farm workers will ask us. Hey, can you ask the Not Our Farm community about this or about that? And then we share all of the responses. So I really encourage you to visit the Not Our Farm Instagram page and take a look at those. Some of the questions are can be pretty intense, like about bathrooms and issues with bathrooms on the farms or sexual harassment on the farm. Some are about just supplies, like what are good farm boots that aren't going to bust every season, or what are good gloves that have dexterity for harvesting greens in the winter, questions like that. What are good farms that you've worked on, so we can name those and kind of map what are worker-centered farms. Stipends, pay, how much is your pay, things like that. So I definitely encourage you to take a look at that. So that's an example of the resource sharing that Not Our Farm does. And then some of our other projects, we have a worker zine, and I think it's in the lobby of your conference. But so this is a zine that came out last year, and it's a collaboration of several workers on farms. And it's basically everything that we would want to know when we first started farming. So what are like good signs that a farm is going to be safe for you, or what are some red flags to maybe not farm on that? What are questions that you can ask farm owners so that you can make sure this is a space that you're going to thrive? So interview questions that you'd have for the farm owner. Lots of resources like that, tips and tricks for workers to sustain on farms, maybe how to work in the heat, how to assess yourself of what kind of farm job you want. Are you more interested in working with animals or vegetables or hand scale or tractor scale, questions like that. And Gabby's here from the Farmers of Color Land Trust, and actually that organization helped to fund our Spanish translation of that zine. So now we have the zine both in English and Spanish, and we've been able to offer it at free of cost to farms and organizations. And it's been a really wonderful resource that we have with the Not Our Farm project. And it's on our website. It's a PDF that you can read, you can download, or you can contact us and we can send you one. We also do human resource training for farm owners and managers about how to write job descriptions, how to get the most out of an interview. We partner with farm owners who manage worker-centered farms, and we put this on for farm owners so that they can also understand the perspective of workers' perspectives too, and how they can guide their farms into being more worker-centered. And then finally, actually just today, so this is great timing, we have a guide for consumers and vendors. It's up on the website. And basically we did focus groups over the summer with over 40 workers, asking them, what kind of questions would you want consumers to ask farm owners, say at a farmer's market or a vendor at a co-op? Like, what kind of questions would you want to be asked to make sure that these are worker-centered farms? So just the same way that a farmer's market customer might ask, is your farm organic? Is your farm no spray? How are your chickens? Are they free range? What are questions that you can ask about the workers? So we've compiled all of that into this. It's a little like bulletin or a pamphlet. And it's something that we have at farmers market stands. It's available on the website to download and print for yourself. But it's a way that consumers can take action and ensure that they're supporting worker-centered farms too. In addition to that, this winter, we're going to be doing a wintering workshop for workers. We're partnering with a meditation teacher who's going to help, it'll be virtual. So over Zoom, a 4-session series on wintering and centering that pause in the winter for workers. So we're doing, these are just an example of the different things that we're doing for workers to support workers through the project. And I encourage you all to engage with us, visit our website, follow us on Instagram. If you're a worker and you want to be interviewed for the project, we would love to hear your story. And yeah, spread the word about this project. The Not Our Farm project has grown through word of mouth with workers telling other workers. And I just want to end on these questions from a worker that we interviewed, Sajo. And it's what do we need to change? What do we need to be creative about? And what do we need to admit to ourselves that's not working in terms of agriculture and working on farms? Thank you.
Thanks, Anita, for sharing all that really important work. And I'm sure we're gonna have questions for you, so if you can hang on for a bit, and we can hear from Gabby next, please. From Northeast Farmers of Color Land Trust.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Give me 1 second to get this. I'm Dr. Gabriela Pereira. I go by Gabi. My pronouns are ella, she, her. And I'm part of the leadership team of the Northeast Farmers of Color Land Trust. I will make a very similar disclaimer as Anita did. We are gonna talk about some truths that it might be uncomfortable for you. That might bring anger, might bring grief. I want to encourage you to talk to your ancestors through this process, to think about how can we do better and hold those feelings and change those feelings towards something that is productive, that we can all be together on this. With that, please take a deep breath and let's talk about land. And I want to talk about land from a different lens, right? So let's talk about equitable leadership, power, and collaborative decision-making and land sovereignty. I have heard you talk about land access, about equity, about many other adjectives, but I want us to center in what is equitable leadership, what is our internal power, and how us collaboratively can make decisions that speaks to the sovereignty of our communities through land. What do you see here, people in the audience? And you need to shout because I cannot hear you super clear. So when you see this image, what comes to your mind? Or people in Zoom, if you want to share the chat as well. And don't be shy. It is a beautiful illustration. So say whatever thing just it comes to your mind.
Land care, what I heard.
Land care.
I see people in nature.
People and nature. Thank you for that. What else? Well, because we have a shy audience and we need to move forward, I want to invite you to see the past, the present, and the future on that image, on that illustration. We're all humans and non-human beings are together, are accountable to each other, and are working towards self-determination, towards carrying sustainability for us and for our future generation. So we hold that together, and it is not us versus them. It is not we people, it is we life, right? And if you put this from a system to how we see things, we are very interconnected. And I want to invite you to think about the complexity of seeing through time And through different structures, through different parts that forms together a system, an ecosystem. So we talk about building wealth, innovation, systems, global systems, equity, life of non-human beings, health, well-being, reciprocity, food, knowledge. So all that form parts of what is our ecosystem of the food system, right? Questions so far? If not, I will move forward. And I wanna put emphasis on the center of this is life. It is not people, right? We people are part of life, but if we don't consider as an equal land, water, plants, animals, by default, we are starting with the wrong food. So we life are part of all this, and we need all the above and the surrounding to have sustainable, regenerative, and thriving ecosystems. In the Northeast Farmers of Color Land Trust, we have mostly 4 programs. Starting in 2023, we will have 5. That is the Land Network, Policy and Climate Justice, Community Conservation, Relationship, and Reciprocity. We all are working together and the intersection of sovereignty, land sovereignty, and we need multidisciplinary approach of thinkers, speakers, doers, and executors, right? Because we need to build as multiple models as people and systems, ecosystems, land, water are in the Northeast if we want to have anything that move into a regenerative system. It is not farms equals acres equals yield equals dollars equals food, right? So again, we take this from multiple approach when we see how time has played a role of extraction, how our ancestors came to this land with the sole purposes of extract people, knowledge, land, water from the original stewards of the land. How we see farming as an extractive operation for the land and people. And we have seen this for the last 300 years. We understand now that owning people, it is not the right approach for this. And I want to invite you to think how owning land is affecting the system. So we understand that we cannot own people, but what do we need to ask ourselves as a community, as a system, to see land as a king, not as a property, right? So when we enter in a purchase, we purchase a deed. A deed is a system that gave us responsibility to the other people's systems and give us as well certain rights to the land that we store. Having a deed doesn't make you a landowner. Land doesn't belong to us. We belong to the land. What is MIFOC? Not only this wonderful 4 or 5 programs, we started in 2018 by the network. 21 people came together in the middle of winter as a way of reducing isolation in rural areas of the Northeast. They came together and they say, how can we achieve land sovereignty and self-determination? In 2019, they decide, okay, so we are going to become a land trust. We are going to hire 2 people And from 2018 to 2019, those 21 people become 164. So the network grew. And moving forward to 2022, we have more than 550 farmers, land stewards, earth workers in our network, where every day we ask the same questions that Anita gave us. What is to be a farmer? What is to be in a good relationship with the land? What is to be in a good relationship with each other? We have 5 programs, and we approach everything that we do, every project, everything through an ecosystem perspective, where our values reflect that land is kin, water is kin, we communities are kin. And today we are 6 people in NIFOC. We practice horizontal leadership. So that means that we don't have an ED, we all are in this together. A little bit more about these 550 people. So 90% of them wants to have a rightful relationship with the land, either live there, have home, or farming. 50% of us are actively seeking for land to develop that relationship. And a good portion of us, 45%, we have experience, home garden experience and cultivation. Here, I want to say that we, the global majority, has been the carrier of knowledge through generations when it comes to seed keeping, when it comes to the relationship with the land, when it comes to understanding how changes, especially climate changes, affect our systems. So shout out to our people that since 10,000 years have been in deep relationship with the land, with the water, and with the seed. So, and this is why every time that I see a white cis heterosexual men talking about how climate change affect your micro community, I get really concerned and really triggered, because you are talking about things that my ancestors have been seeing for 10,000 years, have been working for 10,000 years, and it's very likely that you don't include us. So if we talk about the Berkshires and we talk about climate change and management of land, when you talk about these things, is the Mohican people there? Is the Massacoes people there? Is the Nimook community there? Are they leading what is needed to manage those ecosystems that they have been managed for thousands of years, to move forward for what is the most intense damage to our earth system that the Anthropocene is creating? So when we ask our 550 people, what is the #1 barrier that stop you to be in relationship with the land? We see it: access to capital. Access to capital, difficulty locating service provider. And I want to say that yes, we have extensions office. Yes, we have multiple nonprofits that goes all the way from production, land access, land trust, venture capital, but we are not there, right? So we are not in your programs. We are not deciding your programs. We are not part of your boards. We are not part of anything but saying we want to invite BIPOC farmers. If your programs, your approaches, your things are not created by us, it is not for us. So I want to see that seed in your heart to think, how can we approach communities that doesn't have access to capital, doesn't have access to land, have difficulty locating service providers that are victim of racism and discrimination by your organizations, by your institutions in a right relationship way, where we create trust first, and then we talk about grants. We then ask, where do you want support? Where NIFOC Land Trust can give you support? Where our 5 programs can support you in your relationship to the land? And we we have this beautiful variety of answers. So they are looking to connect to other NIFOC members, to other BIPOC members. They need financial assistance. They seek mentorship from other farmers of colors. They want to have technical assistance in how collaborative they can be together in the land, or they can sell their products and serve their community. So we are currently working on all this by doing what my program does. That is the land network service, that is the holistic technical assistance. And we take here the principle of the 40 fruit tree. If you are not familiar with the 40 fruit tree, this is a apple tree that has been so different other fruits like peach, plums have been I forget the word in English right now. So they are crafted in this apple tree roots, and they flower and they fruit in different times. And this principle, what says is that growth and development takes many approach, and you see the fruits of your labor at very different times. So there is no one road to succeed. You make your own. And the holistic technical assistance is just the ancestral, transactional, and reciprocal, ancestral, relational, and transactional approaches that we take to every farmer land steward that is part of our programs, that are part of our network. And this is how we build together a future that speaks to the sovereignty of our communities, to the land, and the growth of the wealth of our communities, including the land, including the water, including the soil, including the seeds. With this, I want to thank you all. And yeah, if you have any questions, please send us an email through contacts at NIFOC Land Trust. Yeah, I will stop here.
Great, thank you. Three sort of elements of the ecosystem of farming and accessing different populations and thinking about farming and farm work and land differently. We all know those are very important issues. So if you have questions you'd like to ask of any of our presenters, we have some time. Gabby, can you say how far does the land trust span? How far does it go?
We work with 24 territories. That is from Canada to the mid-Atlantic, but in today's borders is 9 different states from Maine to Jersey.
Wow, okay, excellent. Great. And Anita, do you have connections with people? Have you heard stories from farm workers in the Northeast, Massachusetts, Connecticut? Are you working with people here?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's all over the country. So there's many workers from the Northeast who have contacted Not Our Farm. So I encourage you all, you'll read their stories on our website. You can look at what state that they're sharing their stories from.
Great, thank you. Amanda, you said you're about to start this new program where you're leasing land to farmer of color. How far into it have you done?
So in January, we're looking to recruit yeah, a farmer color or immigrant farmer, BIPOC farmer. So we are gonna start cultivating that job description, and I'd love to talk to these two organizations too.
Yeah, feels like a natural connection. I hope you all, you three will talk to each other. Maybe for you. Are there
I have
any
a
questions?
question. For Anita, not our farm. When a farmer is hoarding knowledge from your workers, do they reach out to your organization? And if so, are you a mediator between the farms and the workers?
Thanks for the question. So knowledge hoarding is something that actually happens on most farms. It's not like kind of something that's only happening on like a particularly like abusive farm. Sometimes it's happening because of how much work or efficiency needs to be done, and like they're just assigning the same task to the same worker, or it could be intentional and harmful in that way. Honestly, I can tell you from the maybe 6 farms I've worked on, every single one of them, there's been experiences of knowledge hoarding. And I think most workers would say the same thing. So it is something that's quite common and is part of that oppressive structure that keeps workers from kind of shifting from being a worker on a farm to potentially being a farm owner, if that's something that they so desire, because it's just another obstacle that they have to face. But in answer to your question about Not Our Farm at this point doesn't serve as a mediator between farm owners and workers. We do offer resources for workers, point them in the right direction of ways that they can learn that knowledge that they have maybe not been exposed to. But in terms of mediation, we haven't done that. We do trainings for farm owners, and part of those trainings is about like how you can intentionally not hoard knowledge from your workers, but it really has to come from a place of the farm owner wanting to make those intentional changes on their farm and center workers in that way.
Questions, comments?
Anita, I've worked from a bit, and I know that the physical toll that it takes on when you're doing repetitive tasks, it just is. I often felt like, you know, there might be some kind of solution there to help preserve your body while you're farming. I just observed that you didn't mention that.
The repetitive work, and that there might
And
be
the physical toll it takes on your body, and the potential solution for that maybe diversifying
Right.
tasks or doing some stretching or yoga throughout the day or something.
Yeah. So in terms of sustainable farming, it's about sustainable people too. So
Right.
this is a really important point, that different kinds of jobs on the farm, as you're mentioning, Anita, would also help with knowledge transfer, but it would help with that sort of repetitive stress injury, with that strain on the body, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There's some pretty interesting organizations that are coming out that are doing like specific like stretches for farm workers. So Labor Movement, I think they're somewhere out in the Northeast. They're actually hopefully going to be offering free classes to workers on like different ways to move your body, like rooted in like physical. Oh, Maine. Okay, thank you. Yeah, so like physical therapy movements and things like that, because it is so repetitive and it does have that impact on your body. I mean, that's the thing that at the core, honestly, like keeps me up at night. Like workers are using their literal physical bodies and to build people's farm businesses. And the fact that, you know, we're not being paid a living wage, the fact that, yeah, knowledge is being hoarded from us, there's sexual harassment, racism, all of these things. It's literally our physical bodies. And that is something that you can't give back and you can't, you know, repair at a certain point. So this is life or death in that sense, like in agriculture in this country. And yeah, so it's something I feel very passionate about, but there are organizations that help with the kind of physical, take that physical strain off. But again, it comes back to like how these farms are operating and what we need to be centering workers and thinking about those things when we're setting up our farm businesses.
Yeah, I noticed that the culture on farms is often like, you don't want to like saying that something hurts or that you need to stretch is kind of like a sign of weakness, or sign of like, you have to be tough, like, you really need to, it's like the whole culture is just like working hard and working strong, working through, and it's just sort of, it just doesn't vibe with taking care of your body.
Right. If we want a regenerative farm culture, we have to think about all of these things, people, land, and the way we treat the soil, so. All right, well, we have run out of time, but I want to thank our presenters once again for. Hope you all will join us for the next section, which is after lunch. We've reached lunch. If you purchased a lunch ticket but didn't get your ticket, see Sarah outside for a lunch ticket. Otherwise, thank you very much to the presenters, and hope to see you again soon. And lunch is in the cafeteria, which is that direction.